What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm going to show you how I made this beautiful, delicious, smoky, scratch-made, amazing beef Wellington. Coming up. Nice new knife roll, bud. This is a tenderloin. Pat it dry. This is in fact a USDA prime tenderloin. Picked this up at my local Costco, and this one is completely untrimmed. And that's something I highly recommend doing because they had a whole bunch of perfectly trimmed up, ready to go little Chateaubriands or trimmed up tenderloins, but they were selling for 40 bucks a pound, where this untrimmed one that I had to ask the guy for sold for $19.50 a pound or something like that. So for about half the price and about 10 minutes worth of knife work, I recommend trimming it yourself. Also, you get a bunch of extra meat to play around with. But first thing we need to do is in fact trim this up. Starting on the side here, if you feel around, you'll be able to start separating this side muscle known as the side chain here. And it just wants to separate naturally. Just go as far as you can, and then you can bust out your knife and just help it along its way. Beautiful. As you can see, there's a lot of really great meat in there. You can clean this up, take this silver skin off, get yourself some little medallions or cube it up for stir-fry meat or kebabs, or you can always just throw it in the meat grinder and get the best burgers of your life, but I leave that up to you. Next thing we're going to want to do is start cleaning up all this fat and silver skin on top. Just start grabbing the fat, peel it away. Oh yeah, beautiful. Looking a little bit better. On this backside though, we've got these big chunks that just kind of want to peel up anyway, so go ahead and take those off as well. And there we go, starting to look nice. Now all we need to do is take off this big layer of silver skin up top, all the way down, taking off as little meat as possible. And just like that, we've got a beautifully cleaned up beef tenderloin. All we need to do now is take off this top portion right here. Perfect. A lot of great meat right here. Get yourself some really cool steaks out of that. And now we are left with this beautiful center cut tenderloin, except for this thin end over here. If you're gonna just cook this as a roast, a lot of people will take this tail end and kind of tuck it under like that, tie it up so it's a nice even log all the way across. But for me, I think I'm just going to cut it right about there. And there we go. In about 10 minutes flat, we've got ourselves a beautiful, rather large Chateaubriand, which is the perfect cut you're looking for an amazing beef Wellington. And we've got a big pile of scraps over here, which will turn into some beautiful steaks, some stew meat. I'll probably make a ridiculously tender burger out of some of this. And there's a whole bunch of fat, which we can render down. So, highly recommend it. Let's get this thing seasoned up. Now to start things off, I'm gonna go ahead and give this a good old dry brine, meaning I'm gonna cover this pretty generously with kosher salt all the way around. That's because it's a nice thick roast and we want it to have flavor all the way throughout it. And we also want to get a really good sear on this thing, something that'll shine through all the puff pastry and everything else we're putting on there. So by salting it ahead of time, we'll get some good salt penetration as well as a nice dry exterior for a wonderful dark brown crust. And don't forget the sides, folks. Come on. And then onto a wire rack we go to sit uncovered just like this in the fridge overnight. Next up, let's get started on a demi-glace, which is going to make for an absolutely wonderful sauce on this beef Wellington at the end of the day. Starting with some bones. Ooh. What I got here is some beef shanks, a whole pile of those, dirt cheap, as well as some chicken necks, a chicken carcass, and some chicken feet. All incredibly cheap stuff that is full of collagen and flavor and fat, which is going to give us an absolutely beautiful stock. But first, we need to roast these off. And on the pit we go. We're gonna roast these bones off hot and fast, probably upward of 350, 400 degrees for about an hour or so, just to really get some good color on there, roast them a little bit, get a little smoke on them. And this is in fact my take on Chef John's cheater demi-glace, also popularized by Adam Ragusa, where the combination of chicken and beef does a great job mimicking the classic veal stock that you would use for making a true demi-glace. That should be plenty for a giant batch of stock. So we're gonna roast these off and check back in a little bit. About 45 minutes into this roast, and these are looking nice and bubbly. I'm gonna go through now and put a little tomato paste on some of these pieces. That's just gonna kind of cook down, add some more intensity to our stock, but we wanna roast it for a little bit here. Take off some of that raw edge. I also threw an onion on, but I didn't feel like filming it. And just like that, all our bones are nicely roasted off and into the pot. There you go. Onions as well, skin and all. Also just found a couple of carrots in my fridge. And then we're just gonna cover those with water. And now once up to a nice gentle simmer, we're gonna let it go all night long. So I'll see y'all tomorrow. 20 hours later, it is finally time to strain this stock. I did not mean to go this long, but It's the holidays. It's a busy time of year. Oh, beautiful. Send that through a strainer or 3. And now that this is nicely reduced, we're gonna dilute this with a little bit of some ice water to cool it down rapidly. And now into the fridge this goes to chill overnight. It's time to throw this thing on the pit, get a little smoke on there, because what doesn't sound good about that? So we're gonna rock this pit probably around 200 degrees or so. As long as I keep the internal temp below 110, 120, so we don't overcook this thing, I think we'll be in good shape. So we'll check back in probably an hour, maybe 2. And while we wait, we can check in on our stock, which, as you can see, has solidified nicely. But more importantly, we've got a big layer of fat on top, which we can now quite easily remove. Oh yeah, it's kind of satisfying. And now that our stock has been totally defatted, what we need to do now is reduce this down one final time into our demi-glace. At this point, we can go at a pretty heavy boil until the color is darkened and all the flavors have condensed. While we're getting ahead on things, let's go ahead and bust out a quick duxelle. One of the beauties of beef Wellington, folks, you can do a lot of this stuff ahead of time. So what I got here is some baby Bella mushrooms. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove all of the stems. Pretty classic duxelle here. We got some butter, shallots, garlic, all cooked down nice. Blended up those mushrooms, and now we're just trying to cook all the water out of the mushrooms to concentrate the flavor and make this kind of flavorful paste. And I think traditionally you're supposed to chop the mushrooms by hand or pulse it until it's kind of a rough chop, but I found when you really blitz it like this, it can act more of like a paste or a glue to hold everything together. And once nicely cooked down, we're gonna go in and hit with a shot of bourbon, because why not? Smelling so good over here. And then top it with some freshly chopped up thyme. And just like that, our duxelle is done. Beautiful. And just like that, off comes our beautiful, now nice and smoky tenderloin. And after a nice long reduction, you can see our stock has now become demi-glace. Looking so nice and thick, so full of gelatin. And now into some ice cube trays we go. I make this a couple times a year, and these things certainly do come in handy. All right, folks, we've got our frozen tenderloin, our beautiful duxelle, and of course, our frozen little demi-glace cubes. This is maybe 1/5 of them, and I'm glad to have them on hand. And now I think it's time to head home for the holidays. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where those treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow, the snow. Yeah, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
Bradley, don't you have a beef Wellington to make?
Oh yeah. As you can see, I've made it home for the holidays here in lovely Lebanon, New Hampshire, and it is a very cold Christmas day. And now we need to get our tenderloin seared off. Oh, there it goes. And simply enough, we're just gonna blast this thing with some heat, get some really nice char on there, little Maillard reaction. You know the drill, folks. Oh, that's a great idea. I forgot there's lights out here. Not a necessary step because we already smoked this bad boy, but little extra color, little charcoal flavor, never hurt anybody. And please, folks, don't forget the sides. Come on. Rookie move. And that is looking pretty much perfect to me. And fresh off the grill, we're gonna hit this with some English mustard for good measure. Smelling good in here. Mama, you ready for some Wellington?
I will be. I can't believe you cooked it outside. It's freezing out there.
Yeah, well, luckily it was a really quick cook. Beautiful. And now we're gonna top this with some freshly cracked black pepper. And in typical Wellington fashion, we've got ourselves some plastic wrap down and some lovely prosciutto, which is kind of a pain to work with. Very delicate stuff. A lot of people like to use crepes for making Wellingtons too, but I don't think it's necessary. Can't forget our beautiful duxelle. Kind of convenient, right? Just smear this out a little bit. And once spread out nice and thin, now we can go on with our beautiful little chunk of beef here. Now we just gotta roll this thing up nice and tight. This is gonna be a really big Wellington, by the way. Cute little log. And now we've got some classic store-bought puff pastry because I'm not ready to make that myself yet. We're just gonna roll this out to be as wide as our little log here. Ooh. Back onto some plastic wrap. Out it comes onto this pastry. And we're just gonna do our best to wrap this up as beautifully as possible. Nice and tight. And when we get to this side, we're gonna just take a little bit of egg wash here and just brush that down for a perfect seal. Oh God. A perfect seal. Try not to ding your pastry like an amateur. How many times have I made beef Wellington? This is what, the second?
I think so.
Trim off this excess on the bottom. Pinch these ends together, wrap it back up, same as before. And there we have it, looking good. I'm gonna pop this back in the fridge for a couple minutes to firm up and get nice and chilled. How's Christmas been for you, Mom?
It's been really great to have you and everyone home.
This is a lot better than last year. This has been a much easier process because I did 90% of the work like a week ago.
Yeah, I think we'll eat prior to 10.
Yeah, it'll be nice. They don't know that we ate that prime rib at like 11:30 at night. But it's also the beauty of the Wellington, is a lot of people don't really know that you can do a lot of this work ahead of time. You know, even at this stage, we could pop that in the fridge and cook it tomorrow. We're a little low energy this Christmas day. We had a pretty eventful Christmas Eve, if you know what I mean. Got another sheet of puff pastry here. I put this on a little pan and I just dropped it in a snowbank. What is it, 10 degrees outside? A little bit frozen, which should help us get this lattice pattern that we're going to try for, but I've never had good luck with these things. Just for good measure. How you feeling, Becca?
You know, I tied one on a little too tight last night, but it's 5 o'clock and I finally took a shower, so we're moving on up.
In other news, this lattice came out looking all right after about 45 minutes of knife work.
We're finishing up the green bean casserole.
Oh, very nice.
There's a snake in my Wellingtons!
From here, we're just gonna hit this with a bit of an egg wash. Go through and trim up the undersides. Hit it with an egg wash one more time. We're gonna go on with some flaky salt, of course. Beautiful. And now into a 400-degree oven this thing goes until it is temping right and looking nice and golden. And while that Wellington cooks away, we're gonna go ahead and make ourselves a quick little pan sauce using our lovely little demi-glace cubes, starting with a little squeezer of some oil, going in with some shallots, and just let those cook down for a minute. Freshly chopped garlic, Cabernet Sauvignon. Oh yeah. Go ahead and toss a sprig of rosemary in there, and we're just gonna let this reduce down to a nice syrupy consistency. We're gonna go in with some of our beautiful little demi-glace cubes. And once everything is melted and boiled away and come together just nice, we're gonna kill the heat and throw in some butter and just get that all nice and mixed in. 30 minutes, 35 maybe?
Maybe 35, but it looks so beautiful.
Out it comes, rocking a solid 120 in the internal temperature from the old Thermometer right there. Let that carry over because you gotta let your meat rest, folks. And last thing to do is send our beautiful sauce through a little mesh strainer here to get out all the particulates. All right, folks, moment of truth. I think it's time to slice into this bad Larry and see how it came out.
Ooh, crunchy.
Oh, perfect.
I gotta run around. Oh my God, big reveal, folks. That is truly a sight of beauty, folks. Beautiful cook on there, nice and juicy. The duck cell, look at that perfect ring. I'm psyched, I'm happy, love it. Father, will you carve the roast beast?
Yes.
Brooke, what do you think?
Excited.
Ooh. Oh, daddy likey.
Are you ready for the official taste test? Oh, wow. Merry Christmas, Josie.
After a lovely Christmas dinner off camera, I must say that Wellington was absolutely spectacular. This driveway is a literal ice rink right now. And I know beef Wellington is one of those things that seems really intimidating and real daunting of a task to do because there's so many steps and there's so many different ways you could mess it up, but it's really not all that hard to do. And if you are trying it for the first time, I highly recommend doing what I did and make as much in advance as possible. And this is definitely something I will be doing in the future for family meals because it really took the stress out of Christmas Day, having everything done ahead of time. You know, just wrap it up, throw it in the oven. It came together real quick. And out of everything, you gotta love a good beef Wellington. You know, you got the medium rare meat, the smoky element was there, but not overpowering. And if you've never made demi-glace before, I highly recommend it. That was the star of the show. People were putting it on potatoes, on the Wellington. It was so good, so gelatinous, so rich. Highly recommend it. But all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that subscribe button. Let YouTube know by dropping a like on this video. If you give this recipe a try for yourself, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Chuds BBQ. I love to see what y'all are cooking. Big shout out to all the Patreon members. Thank you for supporting Team Chud and allowing me to keep making all these videos. Merry Christmas from my family to yours. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace!